Hey everyone, it's Dr. H, your friendly wargame guy at the Air Command and Staff College. We're going to talk about wargame roles and responsibilities. We plan on using these roles both in the wargame class itself and in the CW course. You may want to organize this way for your Plan X and JC. So, we're going to talk, this is just an overview. We're not going to get into depth of any particular role. We're going to put together our entire playlist to help you understand a role, the documents you're going to use, the products you're going to use, and also the rules that you need to know for that role. So, um, let's take a look at these roles. So, we designed this around a flight of 12. You may have more people in your flight, and in some cases, you may want to use those people as um, staff. You may want to split up some of these roles to give people to take the responsibility and split it out even more. It's however you want to organize it at that point, because ultimately we're organizing, like I said, as a joint force headquarters, a joint force group, and so in a lot of ways, it's a lot of how the joint force commander wants to handle business. So let's start with the joint force commander. Um, you're responsible for leading the flight's efforts. That's the biggest role to take as a joint force commander. This may involve organizing both internally, but also dealing with coordinating with higher headquarters, with parallel forces that exist in the war game itself. Ultimately, that's the responsibility of the Joint Force Commander. You have to make the decisions, you have to make the approvals, you have to provide the guidance, you have to organize everyone and get them going in the same direction. It's a major leadership responsibility. The Joint Force Land Component Commander is the person responsible for operating ground forces in the theater of operations. So that means taking the Joint Force Commander's guidance, turning it into actionable options, actionable moves on the game board itself, involving the ground components. So we'll talk a little bit more about the rules, but that means obviously you're going to know about how the ground rules work. The Joint Force Maritime Component Commander does the same thing, but for the maritime. So again, go go look at JFC guidance, put together a concept of operations that'll move us down the field. That'll eventually get us into a winning position and winning the game and the war itself. The Joint Force Air Component Commander, again, very similar, but for the air. So you have to deal with the air forces, you have to plan for the air forces, you have to be ready to execute air operations. The J3 is the biggest amalgamation of responsibilities, and we'll talk just in a second about where you might split if you have more people. But I'll just start by saying that the J3 is probably a person where you can split off some of these roles and responsibilities and give them to another person if you have 13 people, 14 people in your flight and you're looking to do that. They are responsible for coordinating strikes in the area of operations, using SAW forces, using cyber and ISR assets to support those strikes in the theater. So that means you're using the SOF rules. It means you're using the cyber rules. It means you're responsible for the detection rules. You are going to deal with the long-range fires, and you're going to maintain, we'll talk about products in a second, the GIPTL, that everybody's going to consult to know how to use their strike assets in the theater to best effect. So it's a big responsibility. The GIPTL is going to be a fairly sizable document those forces are allowed to control. So if you're looking for something to splitting the J3 isn't a terrible thing. Take the soft, the cyber stuff, give it to somebody to manage, and let the J3 worry about detection and long-range strikes. Or if you want to have somebody to worry about the detection side of the house, take the soft, the cyber, and the ISR all at once. Call them the J2 or something, or the J23. Or 3-2, whichever, to support the strikes. But this role is, again, focused on the strikes, the long-range fires aspects of the game, and the detection to make that work. So when we talk about the GIPTL, you'll see what I mean. It's not quite a normal GIPTL in the sense that we have just the target points, but we're going to keep track of whether or not something's detected and whether or not we're going to devote assets to detecting it. The J4 is the person who is responsible for supply. That's both in terms of the locks and understanding the supply rules and setting priorities there, being able to move supply depots, supply MSUs around, but also in spending supply points. Supply points are your currency for buying new things. Guy needs to be reconstituted, supply points. Sand battery needs to be replaced, supply points. All kinds of things go through the supply system, and since it's your general currency for the game, keeping track of that and deciding how to spend it is going to be important. Everybody's going to want to spend your supply points. You're responsible for actually spending them and making sure that those spends go into supporting JFC objectives, not just the person asking's objectives. So, everybody's going to have to know some rules in order to do their role right, but they don't have to know the whole game. The Joint Force Commander needs to understand the rules well enough to what's going on, to know what's going on in the game. Remember that they're not allowed really to leave the room. They're not allowed to go look at the game board itself, tell people what to do. So they have to understand what's going on in the game, why a particular commander might look at them funny for asking them to do a certain thing. That's fine. But they don't have to be an expert in any particular rule system. The GIFLIC needs to know the ground combat rules, the ground movement rules, what ground units are. Remember that while we have adjudicators who are capable of resolving combats and answering rules questions, you really need to know how to read a ground unit marker, how to do movements, how the pieces are going to move. Understand enough about the combat rules to know when something's not smart. You also need to know about the strike rules because, again, you're going to have a lot of strike assets as part of your counter mechs. Similar thing with the GIF mech, just substitute naval stuff. You need to know how naval units fight. You need to know how naval units move, how to read a naval piece. You also need to know some of the air combat rules. Many of you will have aircraft carriers, so you need to know how to use the aircraft carriers and what the air units are and how to use them in a naval sense. The JFAC obviously needs to know the air unit rules, the air combat rules, air defense rules. They're going to be very responsible for ultimately being AMDC, which means that they have to think about what the SAMs do, and you're going to know the strike rules. You're going to be doing strikes with airplanes as part of the game. The TET, which is we're also calling the J3. You need to know the strike rules because that's kind of your big rules, but you also need to know the soft rules. You need to know the cyber rules. You need to know the detection rules. These are all the rules that you're going to need to know in order to successfully both detect things and then strike them, or to use assets other than theater. If you want to use assets other than theater weapons to conduct those strikes, you're going to have to know how to do those. In J4, you need to know the supply rules, which means you need to know how all the supply pieces work. You need to know all the movement rules, and also you need to know what you can spend supply points on. So if there'll be a list, I'm sure, and being able to operate that list is going to be important for you. All right, let's talk about the products and who owns them. The operations order is owned by the JFC. It's the overall plan and direction for the operation. So remember, you're going to do a plan X beforehand. You'll have a plan. You'll write an operations order. And that operations order is the big plan for how you're going to do things through the entire war, right? Each phase. You can modify it with Fragos, obviously, as you need to. But that's the big operations order. You're going to put it together before the game starts, and you're going to reference it fairly consistently to understand what the overall plan is. The big turn-by-turn product that you're going to need as the JFC is going to be the synchronization matrix. Every turn, we're going to produce a synchronization matrix, and this is going to be how the JFC organizes his or her forces and tells his or her component commanders what it is that they need to be doing and how they need to operate together in order to achieve objectives. JFC is also responsible for maintaining the common operating picture. This is a single picture of known information about friendly forces and enemy units in a shareable format. How you build the COP is going to be up to you. Keep in mind, right, you're going to need a COP in your room because the game is going to take place separately from where you are, and people, generally speaking, are not going to congregate around the table and watch the game unfold. They are going to have to bring that information back in. How the JFC wants to do that, how the JFC wants to maintain that COP is part of their job, part of their responsibility. Each component commander is going to come up with the concept of operations each turn. Basically, how do you allocate and employ your forces that are under your control in order to accomplish JFC objectives. So basically, every turn we're going to look at what it is we're supposed to be doing, right? The synchronization matrix, the operations order, we're going to study the COP, and we're going to produce a concept of operations for each component commander that's going to talk about how they're going to use air power or the ground units they have or the maritime units they have in order to accomplish what it is that they plan on doing each turn. Then we have decision support matrices. The decision support matrices are how you're going to handle the situations that don't go according to plan. It'd be nice if everything went according to plan, everything followed the op order perfectly, and then your concept of operations was carried out to the letter. That's probably not going to happen. The enemy gets a vote, and as we know, the dice get a vote, so there is a lot of variance and possible change that you're going to make. We need to keep the game on the schedule, so we don't have time for you to spend 30 minutes figuring out what to do about a particular thing. The decision support matrix allows you to do some of that thinking ahead of time and gives you an idea of what it is you want to do when things don't go quite according to plan, either in a good way or a bad way, right? Maybe you get way more than you thought you were going to get, or you get way less. And either way, the decision support matrix will help you make decisions and know what to do when the time comes. As you'll see on the schedule, there's a lot of time for planning, and a lot of time should probably be devoted to analysis of your course of action and understanding what decisions you may have to make as a result. The other thing that's going to be put together is the Joint Integrated Prioritized Target List, the JIPTL. This is a list of prioritized targets in the AOR. It's not just the list, so we're modifying the normal doctrinal document a bit. There's going to be a little bit of discussion of a reconnaissance, surveillance, and targeting annex. So you're going to keep track of whether something's detected, what you're going to allocate to either detect it, what you're going to allocate to strike to it, and its current condition. So you can know how things are going to go, and you can have a plan of how things are going to go. Again, right, we're not making the decisions at the table. We've got a JIPTL. We've got units allocated to it. We know what our assets are, so we're going to walk up knowing what we're going to try to do, and then we're going to modify how we may approach our strike plan based on circumstances. So you may also want to think about decision support matrices as well as the J3. We're also, for the war game, there's going to be a big white cell. For CW, there's a white cell, but it consists of 2 instructors. It's flight on flight. So they're going to be making some decisions. The white cell really has 2 roles. They're going to serve as national command authorities. So if you are playing as the DPRK and you really want to throw nukes at someone, you're going to go to the white cell and ask them, please, sir, can I throw nukes at them? And they're going to say, well, why do you want to throw nukes at them? And then they'll give you a decision. The answer is not going to necessarily be no, for the record. And also, they have to sort of fill in the gaps. Remember that we've got a game that's really designed to play 1 theater. We're playing 5 theaters all at once. There's a whole world out there, and so there's a lot of things that the rules don't fill in very well or don't tell us what to do. So filling in the gaps either with the rules or with the fiction of the world is going to be the white cell's responsibility. Joint force commanders, particularly with U.S. forces, we're going to meet with the white cell fairly regularly for purposes of allocating out a variety of resources. I mean, the most obvious and basic is we've got bombers generally in CONUS or in the United States itself. Who's going to use them on a turn-by-turn basis is going to be a question that's going to get asked, and the white cell will provide answers for it. So that's the big thing. Also, the white cell is going to be the people who are responsible for determining things like initiative. We're not the normal initiative in the game requires keeping track of victory points. That's very fiddly and very easy to forget to do at any given point. So we're just going to have the white cell decide who has initiative. And we're going to do initiative by domain. So some people may have initiative in the air. There may be initiative on the ground. There may be initiative in the maritime. They will also publish weather forecasts and what the weather is. So there's no need to worry about what the weather, no need to do the weather phase specifically. White Cell is going to publish that. In CW, we may be doing we're probably going to actually just roll for the weather, but the idea is that we're going to have weather that makes sense for the entire world for the actual war game. That's going to come from the White Cell. We're also going to have adjudicators. Adjudicators are going to have a computerized aid for getting results, but also for being able to answer rules questions. However, as a player, you do need to know the rules and how to move the pieces and what the pieces are, right? We can't be at the step where you're trying to figure out what the numbers mean on the air pieces. You have to know that. You have to know that how to conduct the air superiority phase. The adjudicator is not going to instruct you on that during gameplay. What they're going to do is you're going to tell them, like, okay, I've got 4 double stars, so in the standoff phase, in the long range phase, I've got a 4. What have you got? And then you're going to tell the guy or gal who's doing the adjudication. They're going to push the buttons on the computer. Boom. They're going to give you the results. But you have to know, things like the phases and how these things all work. We're going to have videos about how all the rules work. Don't worry about it. We're going to go through it piece by piece. You'll know what to do. The adjudicators are going to be responsible for, one, the resolution of combat, and 2, being able to answer questions that may come up through a computer interface. Right, we're going to have a large language model that's only read the rules and can give us answers about the rules. This is the schedule overall for the war game. How it's going to run in CW is faster than this. CW is going to try to get through several turns in a day. We're going to go 1 turn a day in the big war game just because of the number of pieces that we have to move around, the number of moving parts there are. We're not going to go over this bit by bit right now. This is just mostly to tell you that a couple of highlights. One, there are academics periods scheduled in. So anticipate meeting with your instructor in those time periods and probably outside of those time periods, but we know for sure that the instructor is going to meet with you in the morning, about lunch, and as the game wraps up, as the game day wraps up, to have the academic discussions to talk about where things are going. And that, generally speaking, we do the front page of the SOP during the morning, and we do the second page during the afternoon. So there's a lot of land combat in the afternoon, a lot of air combat, strikes, SOF in the morning, and then we wrap up the day after we're done with land combat with reconstituting forces and all those sorts of things. Everybody who has roles, including the deputies, are going to be expected to carry out those roles at the table during their scheduled time, and we really would like to keep to the schedule. So time limits are part of the realism. Be ready to make decisions quickly, and if you need help making decisions quickly, make decision support matrices. That just about covers it for what we are planning on doing for the war game. Again, this has been an overview. We're going to go into the depths of each role as we go through time, and hopefully you have some idea of what role you're going to be after this video, or you can discuss it further with your classmates, and then you can get smart on that role, which again we're going to try to do by providing you video playlists to do. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I will see you soon.